Good morning. This is the office hour for Oregon State University PDC Pro Fall 2023. This is Zoom number 8 fall for fall 2023. And the next lesson due is lesson 8, the local plant survey and plant system design on February 12th, so next Monday. Okay, and we've got someone coming in here. Good morning, Roger. Oh, can you hear me? Am I not muted? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear you. I will just say this is the office hour for the fall 2023 course. So I haven't got anybody in yet, but you're welcome to stick around if you like. But I can't hear you. So no, volume's up. Right. Well, we are recording. So Roger, I can't hear you. I don't know if you want to stick around, you're welcome to. I'm just going to record a little bit of an overview on lesson 8. Do a little screen share. Hoping some of my fall 2023 students show up. Okay. So the next lesson coming up is lesson 8, the local plant survey. So like the ecology survey, lesson 7, this one's got one of these 4-point assignments with lots of details. This is basically informing portions of your design coming up when you do the plant system design. So gathering information on which natives are going to be most useful to you, which ones you want to have, which are going to do well, and then what some of their common uses are. So I think pretty straightforward. Now that you've done the ecology, oh wait, no, yeah. So yeah. Okay, I'm getting myself confused here. Yeah, okay. So pretty straightforward. Anyway, fill in the blanks, put some images in. You can have a couple of different plants for each season. Just pretty straightforward information, doesn't need a ton of detail. Don't spend all of your time on the survey. Just get to know some of the native plants that you'd like to use. And then in terms of where you're going to be sourcing those plants, this is a really useful kind of a Rolodex of just being able to find out where you might be able to source some of those native plants from. This can be kind of tricky, so sometimes you want to reach out to your local university extension, can have some information, conservation organizations, the Resource Conservation District for your area, if you have one, can be helpful to helping you find out where you would get some of those native plants for, because sometimes they can be coming from quite far away in order to get plant stock that's actually relevant and relatively adapted to your specific climate. Like here in Southern California, we can wind up with plants that are actually grown and well adapted to like Washington and Oregon, which is like quite a different climate. And so they're not as hardy as they would be if they were actually raised and adapted to Southern California climate, or Southern US, so kind of a hotter, drier climate. But of course, they can grow more stock further north where they don't have the high sun exposure. They've got more water. Land is cheaper and more available to use for nurseries. So just keep that in mind, that you're going to want to try and find nurseries that help address some of those issues. Okay, I want to make sure I am screen sharing. Just want to double check this. Okay. Oh, okay. Roger says he's not hearing anything.
I fixed that. Sorry, it was user error.
Okay. All right. So you're going to. Great. Are you going to stick around, or did you? There you are.
I'm here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just going to run less than 8, and then I could take questions on whatever you're working on if I don't have any of the fall students show up, if that's all right.
Am I on the right time for our
No, so
call?
the ones for the office hour for your cohort is the opposite Monday or Tuesday, pardon me. So it'll be next week. So this week
Yep.
you're doing lesson 2.
Oh, gotcha. So
Yeah.
the office hours is until the following week. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're free to go or free to stay, whichever you prefer.
I'll stick around if you don't mind.
Okay, not at all.
Thank you.
Okay, so similar here, the farms that you're going to be looking for that can either provide like information, camaraderie, sometimes like livestock, if that's something that you're interested in your for your site, helping create some food resiliency by getting you away from grocery store produce, if that's something that you're looking to do. So just, you know, three or four local farms that interest you. They might be permaculture farms or regenerative. They might just be organic. They might just be even just a conventional community supported agriculture, but just three or four farms that are of interest to you and relevant to your site. And then another SWOT analysis. You're familiar with these by now. Any questions for me? Okay, and then your plan system design, this is where you're really getting into the nuts and bolts of design. So if you're feeling like you've gotten to this point and you're kind of getting checked in with like not having having background information on how to actually go through the design process, go back to some of the earlier lessons in like the foundation of permaculture. And I'll tag some of these in the discussion in the office hours. We're just having a discussion with the other instructors because we do occasionally get complaints from students that are like, oh, we get to lesson 7 and we're supposed to start design process and we haven't really been taught how to do that. And some of that information is actually kind of way back in like lessons 3, 4, and 5. Just like the foundations of like how to choose planting and layouts and stuff. So we are building some more material. We may be building some more materials for that, but more we're referencing back to earlier in the course. So if you're struggling with that at this point, reach out to me. I'll tell you what the other instructors are telling their students. So far, I haven't had in 4 or 5 cohorts, I haven't had any specific complaints about that. But if you're running into that or feeling that's an issue, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't just get stuck and frustrated at this point, because this is kind of where the fun begins. So this is also where like your digital design stuff starts to come together. So you're going to want to start off laying out what your main goals are, your statement of purpose for your design, for your location or that site, the project, and then the goals that are going to help you accomplish that statement of purpose. This is going to where you're going to bring your base map forward, which is why we wanted to have it super clear so that you can shrink it down and still, you know, see it's not too cluttered up. So this is just going to be your line map, not with a satellite image underneath. Don't forget to give your titles, get your scale bar, accurate, legend, all this, you know, the little nitty-gritty stuff that keeps cropping up. And then this is where you want to show what your existing conditions are, so what you're starting with. And the reason this is important is that as you design, you want to be able to look back and be like, okay, this is where I started from. This is what we're trying to move towards. So, you know, sometimes it's a lot more fun just to put what we're dreaming of and what the vision is, but you really want to be clear from like laying out what the gap is between where you are and where you want to get to. Because that can both highlight opportunities and it can also show different, you know, threats or you know, hazards or weaknesses that you're going to run up against that may come clear as you go through the design process. So we always want to be able to refer back to that. If you're not sure what that's going to look like, there's some good examples here. Oh, there's one good example. I thought there was 2. Oh, pardon me. Okay, so there's your existing sites and conditions. And now the fun part. So now you can start to look at what do you actually want this to look like? Where are you going to put your put some of these plants in? Don't go too crazy. I mean, just pick out 3 to 5. You know, kind of fill in the blanks. Sometimes that can be hard to source plants, so you might want to source out ones that you're quite sure you can get. Things like you know, some basic shrubs. For instance, Southern California, rosemary, your sages. Some, like if you're looking for ground covers like thymes, oreganos, marjoram, stuff like that for herbs. some wildflower mixes, maybe strawberries. So just kind of keep it fairly focused to like straightforward choices, not ones that you're going to have to like source from, you may or may not be able to source at all. Just a recommendation. And then any elements that you're looking at implementing, like if this is going to be sort of a pollinator berm or a rain garden, that's, I highlight that here. Just look to these little notes here: proposed plans, speak about the water management. Just add your thoughts here, like tell us what's going on in this map here. In terms of your plant legend, this may have come up for you before. I think most students it has by this point. When you're making an abbreviation, use the first two letters and the first two letters of the genus name and the first two letters of the species name. So I always struggle to come up with an example, and I wish I used the same example over and over again. But say you've got tree Picea aves. So PI is going to be the first two letters of the genus name, and then aves is the species name. So aves, you're going to see PIAB. So what that does is it gives you a 4-letter abbreviation that designates that plant on your site plan. So if you were to just do like say that's black spruce. I know it's not perfectly accurate, like Picea, I can never remember exactly the species name, but say that's black spruce. If you use like, here's a good example, BS as that plant name, you're going to run into something else. For instance, there's a black sage. Well, then now what are you going to call black sage? You're going to do BLSA, something else. So if you use those 4 letters, it's never going to happen, but it's going to be much rarer that you're going to have 2 plants with exactly the same abbreviation. If you do have 2 plants with exactly the same abbreviation, usually it's one of 2 cases. Either they are 2 very closely related plants, so say like 2 Artemisia species, in which case you could do like AR SPP, so AR species, a species of Artemisia. Or salix, like a species of salix, like a relevant species of salix, for instance. You can also use VAR, which is VAR, as a shorthand for varietal. So it would be the same species, but a varietal. So a lot of the prunus, like the stone fruits, that's actually the same species, but different varieties. So for instance, like different varieties of peaches. But that abbreviation will mean that that overlap is very rare. So it would be either where they're 2 very closely related varieties, or a complete opposite, where they're completely different, completely unrelated plants. So in which case you could have something like, in brackets like a tree, or you could put like a little asterisk or something where if it's a tall tree versus a ground cover, that they have the same acronym. You can designate it somehow that way. It's probably not going to come up in this context because it's a pretty small, very focused design. If it does come up, just find a way to deal with it that way. But you find a way to deal with it in a way that you can do consistently. But using that 4 letters is a pretty nice design convention. I personally learned it from Dan Halsey with United Designers Limited. I think it's a really strong way to, and it's a good convention used in like landscape architecture to clearly designate those plants without getting confused with common names, which can vary a lot between Latin names, and gets over that problem of having two plants with the Latin name abbreviation being the same when it's only 2 letters. So, okay, hopefully that's clear. Legend should be straightforward. If it's on the map, it's got to be in the legend. Same symbols, colors, that sort of thing. So again, here's a nice example of what that design might look like. So you can see here, I mean, they do have a full legend, full plant list. They've just used 3-letter abbreviations, which I'm not a huge fan of. It can be, it can be clear enough, but like AO could be a lot of different things. The other thing, the size of the circle helps does it designate what size of a plant that is. But just take your cue from the examples, what feels like a good fit to you. Whether or not you're looking to do this as professional design will also bear in there. So, okay, here's just an extra slide for you to play with. Okay, so now for the cross section. super important still, scale bar, compass, legend. You're going to want to include the summer and winter solar angle, which are linked in the lesson resources, the assignment resources in the discussion. You're going to want to show your base map or the plan view from here, or didn't go far back enough. Take this plan view and bring it forward here. And then you're going to want to take a cross section from, so this is A to A prime, you could also call it A to B. And that's the cross section that you're going to show here. And so you've already done this with the site cross section. Now you're just going to do a cross section of this specific design, just to show like how you're stacking different plants together. You know, if you're doing a food forest layering sort of a format, you'll have a canopy tree, some sort of shrub, maybe like a herby forb layer, ground cover, a vine, you might have a mushroom layer, all those aspects. Again, examples over here is really nice and clear. See here, they have actually included the root structure, which is really nice and helpful because it does give you an idea of like, oh, I've actually designed in a lot of like deep rooted things like carrots and beets and everything, but I don't actually have any like shallow, really soil holding ground covers. So that can be kind of a nice way to visualize that. Here they've even got a climber with some sort of a rock structure, I believe. That might be, yeah. So this is this is a grapevine. Yeah, so some a nice example there to look to. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. And then here's your plant system design. This is like, just tell us all about the species that you chose, why you chose them. This information should be relatively consistent as you find on the internet. Just cite your sources. It might vary from here to there. So, like for Southern California, some of the plants that I'm familiar with from, like, for instance, from Southern British Columbia that grow as like tall trees, for instance, the Saskatoon bush is a full-fledged tree. It's a serviceberry tree. Here, if it would grow at all, it would be a small shrub because it's water and heat limited. It doesn't produce particularly well down here. But keep in mind that some of those factors might change depending on where you are. So try to find information that's local to you for what that plant might turn out looking like. Similar for like dwarf and full size varieties if you're going with those. Okay, but all that information you should be able to find somewhere online. If you're interested, especially if you're interested to do this professionally, Plants for a Future, pfaf.org, .com or .org. Yeah, so .org. Really great database search. So lots of information here. Now, Natural Capital Plant Database is another one that used to be provided with the course. Now, that access has ended. They don't do that anymore. But it's $50 a year for a membership. This was created by Dan Halsey of United Designers International and Paula Westmoreland, who runs Ecological Design, which is one of the longest running, I believe they're the longest running, and they are a women-run ecological design company in the US. So that's Ecological Design Inc. So really great people. They've got a ton of resources in here. Unfortunately, you do have to have a membership, but I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. So you go to plant database here. You can search for plants by all these different characteristics. You can filter different things. You know, you can create really tight filters and just get like a few plants. You can make it pretty loose. You can choose just by zone, see what you come up with. And then once you've done that, if you've got a set of plants, you can come up with different polycultures. So they've actually got a set of polycultures that have already been developed. So if you go to one of these, it'll give you an overview in the table. I mean, this is zone 1 to 13. That's pretty wide. You would have to really weed through this to find plants that are going to be appropriate to your particular site. Now, the way to do that, you'd export polyculture members, and then So I'm gonna make sure this is going to come up as something you can actually see. Actually, we're just waiting for it to load. Anyway, you get a CSV. Okay, so it's not going to show it. I'm going to new share. Okay, so this is what you wind up with. I'm going to move it over to my other screen, so I'm looking at the camera, sort of. Okay, so this is what you get when you download one of these database pages. All of this detail. You've got binomial plant height. So this is a binomial I was talking about. The two, Arctium lapa, ARLA, Sicorium intybus, CIIN, that sort of thing. Makes it really easy to sort these. They also have individual plant IDs. So each species, even variety, has its own unique four-number identifier. You'll get height, spread, rooting depth, seasonal interest. So if there's particular colors, there's specific notes, which can get quite long, flower color, root type, bloom time, fruit time, texture, all of these different aspects. And then they've got this really great section where you can see there's a whole list of ecological functions. So domestic animal, forage, dynamic accumulator, which means it's the idea that plants, like deep-rooted plants, can bring up minerals from deep soils and bring them up to the surface. Javin Bernakovich and I recorded a podcast on this a few years ago, a podcast episode on it a few years ago. There's not a lot of scientific support for the idea of dynamic accumulators. It makes intuitive sense and it seems really intuitively appealing, but there's not a ton of support for it. And that's from people that do very in-depth soil nutrient research. But most of these dynamic accumulators are very deep-rooted plants, which has its own benefits because they're pumping root exudates into the soil column far below the surface. So those might be daikon is a very deep-rooted plant. They talk about comfrey as another one. So it's got a deep tap root and then kind of long not arterial, but brachial roots, so side roots. So all of those, even if they're not necessarily quote unquote mining nutrients from deep in the soil column and bringing them up to the surface, they are going to be interacting with the surface and building soil at a deeper level. So feeding soil microbes and all that good stuff. Okay, so then there's a list of human uses and crops, which vary. Sometimes you see these repeated. That's just an artifact of how the database is set up, and there's not really any way to get around that. I just go through it manually and delete. If I'm providing these to clients, I just go through and manually delete any duplicates. Sometimes a find and replace can help speed that up. But okay, so that's what you get with the plant capital database, which I think is just I think it's well worth the $50 a year. And it also kind of goes to a good cause. I'm going to stop this share. No, I don't want to save them. So those come in as a CSVs. You do have to rename them. What I do is I just make sure to download one, copy and paste this name, and put it into the file name so I don't lose track of what that is. So I'll show you what I sent to a client last week. All right, so this was the list of plant polycultures that I downloaded them for their particular site. Some of them I did go through, and these ones aren't renamed, but I'm not going to open up their private client file. But some of them I did go through and select only varieties that were zone 8 or zone 9 and upwards because they're in Southern California. So some of the plants that were included in the database. Sorry, I just realized I'm not showing this to you. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. Some of the plants that were included in these polycultures aren't actually within zone 10, zone 9 to 11 that would be that would pertain to Southern California. So you do have to do some manual editing on it, but it's a huge help in terms of designing. They've provided, let me see, let's go back here. There's tons of design resources. Oh yeah, so polyculture design. there's a whole section here on helping you do that better. I think this is all really helpful and fabulous. So yeah, I think it's well worth it. It's up to you if you want to just go with the free resource. PFAF and Google are your friends. So go ahead and do that, whatever works for you. Okay, let's go back to our lesson. I want to make sure. Just want to make sure I'm on the right chair. Yes, okay, here. Okay. Don't forget your sources, photo credits. You'll remember this, I'm sure, but your microclimate should go in the side here. Oh, no, this is canopy, the layer that you're doing. So canopy, sub-canopy. Okay, and then this is if you've got doing kind of a food forest, this is a good example that you could look to of how they're layering in, different herbs. The overstory trees are going to be the apple trees. There's a prune. So the apples are malus. There's a vine. There's some shrubs. Ceanothus and Elaeagnus are both kind of shrubby trees. Okay, and then this is where you get to kind of think about how it all comes together. If you're not familiar with the permaculture principles, go back to earlier in the course. There's some coverage on principles and needs and yields. So permaculture principles and needs and yields in the early videos. And just think about how all these things are supporting. What you're going to find is as you start to see different connections, you're going to start seeing more connections, and it kind of just becomes this like fractal expanding, almost a Pandora's box sort of thing, like starting to see relationships between elements. Just go with kind of like what fits in here. If you want to do an extra slide and kind of expand on that, that's fine. If you've got the time and kind of capacity to do that, you're welcome to. But just sort of like, pick a few basic ones to really develop rather than trying to exhaustively list all of them. So try and think of a few like key ones and describe them well. If you're feeling like if you get overwhelmed at this point. Think about maintenance, how you've considered it. So are you looking at plants that are going to fit well for your environment and that aren't going to need a lot of extra care or maintenance? For instance, like blueberries can require a lot of soil maintenance to keep the soil acidic enough that they thrive. So if you're choosing plants that need a lot of that extra care, then that's kind of one thing that you're going to need to think about how you're considering maintenance in your system. And then, of course, the big part of that is how it's going to be watered and now and into the future. So a lot of plants, especially trees and bigger shrubs, are going to need at least a year or two. Sometimes like the bigger trees are more like 3 to 5 of just enough water to get them going and get them established. So even, if you run across, for instance, like Mark Shepard's work on restoration agriculture and the stun gardening, sheer total utter neglect acronym that he uses, when you go to his workshops and when you read his material, he'll be like, yeah, but you still wouldn't put a baby out in the field and expect it to grow up. Like, you still need to raise these babies with enough support that they can thrive on their own when they actually, when they're on their own. So you want to water trees like in a way. So if you're in a very dry environment, like most of us are, in this cohort, in this context, you want to drop water, say every like few days or like twice a week, water really deeply and then back off. And then so get them used to that intermittent water regime so that they're putting down like very deep roots and going to look for water rather than just being used to like water all the time right at the surface. So that's how you would be installing and watering those plants so that they're kind of primed for success long term. Okay, and this is pretty straightforward. Passive or active rainwater harvesting, how you integrate it into your design. That's going back to some of the water management stuff you've done. This is also where we really start to think about, you would pull forward some of that information that you've brought up earlier in the course. And another SWOT analysis, and then you're done with that one. Okay, that's all that I need to cover for this one, and I don't see any of my students have shown up, so I'm going to stop my share and let's see. Mhm. Okay, it looks like we lost. Oh, Roger, are you still here, Roger? I
I
don't.
am,
Oh, you are. Okay, I'm trying to see. Oh, there you are. Okay, we had your video off. That's all. Okay,
I was just lurking and listening and
gotcha.
co-browsing. Yeah, it's all good
Okay.
info.
Any questions on lesson 8?
Not
Oh,
yet.
before I end.
No, it's really cool to see how much info and resources are coming because I think I was getting stuck on what you alluded to at the beginning, which is, wait, I'm not ready for this. And then I slowed down and I realized what I was being asked to do is not to get too far ahead because that's still coming. And it's really nice to see how much is coming.
There is a lot coming. Yeah. Yeah, it does come up. So
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for letting me lurk and have a great week. I hope
no
you stayed
problem.
dry.
Okay, are you good with lesson 2 and lesson 3 coming up?
It's one of those things where I know that there's a gap between what I submitted and what I could do, and I'm typically never comfortable with
Mm,
that gap, but it just is what it is. It was a lot of work and a little bit of frustration, but I got it in, and I my plan is to go back and iterate on it constantly.
perfect.
So it's there. I'm moving on and I'm doing my best, so it's fun.
Okay, good job. All
Thank
right,
you.
cool. Well, nice to see your face. Nice to see somebody in here. So
Yeah, okay. Have a good day.
you too. Bye.
Bye.